Good afternoon, everybody. Sean Birdsong here, Sharon Led Line. Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Court. Today we have a special guest with us today, director, producer, executive, and director of development for ESPN Films, Mr. Adam Neuhaus. How's everything going, sir?
Doing well, doing great. At this point, we get like applause from the crowd, with the introduction. I feel good. Here I am. Thank you. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, no problem. Now, how have you been doing? I know it's been a while since we've seen each other, but I know since 2020 to now, there's been a lot of things going on, COVID and everything. How have you been handling, everything that's been going on past year with COVID and everything, yourself and your family?
Oh, sure. I feel blessed. Family's been okay. Sticking with, I'm staying socially distanced all the way. I'm not getting COVID a month before I get a vaccine. So I'm doubling up on all precautions at the moment, playing it safe. And, hopefully in 2022, we'll be back to some semblance of normal.
Okay. So it didn't really, I know that, we were at the office and everything. So was it like a thing where people had to leave the office?
We, like everyone else, the interesting thing about ESPN, right? We certainly have people that need to be there to record the games, to work the control rooms. I obviously work in the storytelling unit. So my timelines on projects are much different. And so I'm lucky enough to be able to do my job kind of in the same way, in COVID as post-COVID. And in a lot of ways, it's, I've been able to have more meetings and, meeting with directors, meeting with producers, trying to find those stories to get into the pipeline. And our stuff takes a long time anyway. So, and a lot of it is about historical events and not necessarily shooting current day stories. So we've been able to keep a lot of stuff in motion. And then I'm sure, we had a really amazing run of films. We had a lot of stuff that was done that we moved up to kind of support the, live sports went off the air, and we kind of filled the gap. And so, last year we had, Michael Vick and Lance Armstrong and Maguire Sosa and Bruce Lee and Oscar Pistorius, and certainly Last Dance as well. So, we've been able to, we work so far out on projects with the hope where things are done and as needed, ESPN can utilize them on air.
Right. Now, we're going to talk about what you've been doing over your career at ESPN. I want to talk real quick. Can you talk about, you being a director for the Ghetto Film School in this Bronx, New York? Can you explain what that project is about?
Sure. The Ghetto Film School is one of the best nonprofits in the country. It's one of the ultimate film programs that exists. It's based in the South Bronx. It's now expanded out to Los Angeles and London. And their idea is just to use filmmaking as a tool for learning. Certainly, they've been around over 15 years now and have graduated a ton of people into the industry as well. And so I've been a supporter, for many years. I served on the board of directors. I now serve on the advisory board. I just believe in kind of providing opportunity to young people in general, and that people with different perspectives are going to create better stories. So it's really been an unbelievable pleasure, not just to support the program currently, but also because I've been supporting for so long. A lot of the kids that I helped teach and volunteer with when they were 15, 16 are now making amazing stuff and, are poised to kind of dominate the industry moving forward.
That's great to hear. And I was raised in the North Bronx. So when you just said the Bronx, I'm like, yeah, but when you were growing up, I want to ask, was directing and filmmaking always something you wanted to do in your life, or did that come back later?
No, it was always a thing. I think they say you take on like the passions of your parents, and, my dad, going to the movies was always the thing that, he loved doing. So I remember seeing like foreign films, when I was 7 or 8 years old, going to the movie theaters and, and just really having that be a deep bond with my father. And then my mom, just loves stories as well, and a big sports fan. So I feel as if like, ending up at ESPN feels like a real fait accompli, of where I was coming up. But I just always just loved storytelling in general, and films was the kind of beginning of that journey for me.
Obviously you saying, you grew up with your dad taking you to the movie theater and everything like that. When you went to Emory University, what was your major while you were there at Emory? And did you kind of carry, did you have like a theatrical vision as far as something you wanted to major in there? Or like, what was your major at Emory? What was that process like?
Yeah, I think I was a little confused about what I want to do, or I didn't trust what I want to do. I think I always definitely wanted to be in film. And even though I went to a lot of films, I didn't know anybody in the industry. I didn't have a model of how to break into the industry. I didn't have any insider knowledge. So I think, I wasn't prepared to kind of jump in and say, oh, I'm just going to do film. So when I was at Emory, I ended up majoring in philosophy. I felt like, that was something learning, listen, I knew I wasn't going to be a finance guy. I knew, so I knew I was going to do something kind of in a creative field. So I just felt like philosophy was something that could apply if you're not learning a kind of trade, then, it's really about how you adapt. But I minored in film studies, and like I knew towards the end that like this is what I was going to get into. And after graduating, I made my way to New York, and started that path of interning, and beyond just interning and work, like all my side hustles as well, like all surrounded kind of the film and entertainment space.
And I think in New York City, that's important, right? Everybody has a side hustle. There's no way you can live in a city without a side hustle.
Everyone's a slash, so you got to do slash this. And, certainly when I started in the business, like, I worked as an assistant for several years. I came up in the mail room at the William Morris agency,
wow.
Wearing a tie and delivering the mail, and, getting paid barely anything. So, I had to find other ways. I bartended, in the city. I did those things until I could find a job that could pay me enough, to be a full-time job.
Now, I think that that's so important that you said, you call it slash. A lot of the youth that we reach out to and we talk about different things, it's like some kids and even some adults, typically feel like it's a sprint and not a marathon. And it's amazing to hear so many stories, especially, former athletes, current athletes, everybody who we're talking to is like, it's a long journey to reach your goal, whether it's basketball or anything off the court. So, obviously you working, sort of those odd jobs and working hard, hitting the pavement and doing those kind of things. How was that experience for you when you first started at ESPN, and what was that like for you to get that kind of opportunity at ESPN?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think, the long game is a huge part of this. And, when I was coming up, I would start my own networking group, among other assistants, and I would start to gather people and meet people, and all those people that were assistants back in those early days, I kept in touch and grew that group. And now all those people are basically my Rolodex and my network across all of the entertainment, so I've been at this game a while. Coming to ESPN was a pivotal moment in my career, because I had spent the whole part of my career pretty much on the production company side. So on the side of, getting stuff made, trying to sell ideas into places. And so this was my first time on the network side and on the buyer side. It was also my first job in sports. I'm just somebody who worked across content and storytelling. I worked, on reality shows. I worked on digital projects. I worked on a video game. I worked on documentary. I worked on scripted. I worked on branded entertainment. So I got a lot of different reps doing a lot of different things. And I think, when the opportunity ESPN came up, ESPN Films really sees themselves as kind of like the filmmaking center for ESPN. And so really they were looking for someone who understood the filmmaking community, who also happened to know sports. And so that was the kind of key Venn diagram that I think made me kind of a perfect fit for what they were looking for.
Now, you being the director of development for ESPN, I'm sure you get a lot of people pitching. So if you can how would you just tell us how you deal with that process, and the person would kind of walk through that process?
Sure. So, the thing about being in development or at ESPN is, like you said, there's a tremendous amount of pitches coming in. I think last year we had something like 1,500 pitches that we evaluated for films, and we might have said we might have said yes to 4 or 5 things. So, it's
Okay.
a very difficult process. I will say, I spent my whole career on the production company side getting 1,000 no's sent in my direction, taking projects out, pitching, having no. And so I really believe like that experience has made me uniquely equipped to be good on the other side as well. Like when I'm hearing pitches, like it could be your idea, but there's also a lot of things that you can't control. We might have recently committed to another project in the same space. Maybe there's limited dollars and we're pushing in another direction. There's so many things that exist, outside of your pitch that's coming in. But I'd really try to give everyone the time of day to hear their pitch, to provide feedback, to not leave them hanging. We tell people no transparently. We try to tell you why it's a no. And we try to tell you to come back with the next thing. I mean, I think what I'm looking for when people are pitching stuff into me is I'm looking for someone who knows their idea inside and out, who's showing a passion for it. If it takes me 45 minutes on Google to remake your pitch, that's not really a good pitch. Like I need you to tell me something I don't know about the project. I need you to have gone the extra mile to talk to people, to find out where the archive is, to understand the rights of the story, to really push and not just bring a deck that you put together off stuff that you cobbled together. So that's really the ideal thing. And then I'm looking for a point of view. Don't tell me what the score was. That's not what I'm looking for. Like I know the history, or I can look that up. So don't tell me that. Don't tell me how many points this person had. Like tell me why this is a story. Tell me how you're going to tell the story. And then I'm going to watch your previous work to see if you can pull off what you're pitching me.
That's a great thing to share. I think just in life in general, we try to tell the youth, if you find a passion for something, really do all the steps, stay with the steps so you can have your elevator speech where a person would pick up that, oh, they're passionate, they know this stuff. Oh, okay, come on, let's tell us some more. But it's knowing the foundation of the idea. It's not just saying, oh, I can do that. And
Yeah,
I
I
think
want
that's
someone who's like, it doesn't matter if I say yes or no, they're gonna go make it happen regardless.
exactly.
That's the kind of vibe that I really want for somebody who's bringing something in. Because we
Yeah.
want something that's special. We don't want to we're not in the business of just handing out checks for people to make stuff. I want people to like give us their all and give us their best creative to make it happen. No, that makes sense. I mean, that's kind of exactly what we're always trying to do, which is provide perspective and context. And, something happens in the past and now we're able to kind of, oh, that happened because of this, this, and this. And because of that, this happened. And you think you know this story, but actually it's this story. And certainly when we're going through history, something happens, you read the news, you see it on TV, it's on social media, and you maybe get a sense of the story and then you're on to the next thing. So a lot of times we really prey upon the idea that people have terrible memories. You don't really remember anything, and if they do remember it, they frequently remember it incorrectly. So with allowing some of that time, we're able to do a re-examination of that time, and you can be like, wow, I didn't know that those two things happened so close together, or wow, I didn't know that that was connected to that. So we're all just kind of living history every day, but allowing time, and that's why when people pitch us stuff, a story might still be ongoing. I mean, certainly the Tiger Woods documentary on HBO is a good piece of filmmaking, but we felt like the story is not necessarily done on Tiger. And there might be other parts of that story that, kind of emerge. So we're always in that kind of push-pull because sometimes people take out projects before we might be ready to tell them, but we always try to ask ourselves, so what? Why are we going to care about this story, and why is it special, and what can we bring to it?
Right. Now, you have many hats, at ESPN, obviously you being, director of development. One of your most successful, I guess I call it a franchise, is the 30 for 30 documentaries. Where did that idea come from? And I know there are other producers who, produce the films and everything, but where did that idea for 30 for 30 even come from, to where it's been many years now, a lot of films that have made, the airway. Can you talk about how that process started and like where the idea came from?
Yeah, I mean, 30 for 30 was born out of an idea from Connor Shell, Bill Simmons, and John Dahl. So it was created about over 10 years ago. And their idea was to pitch 30 stories from the first 30 years of ESPN. So it was supposed to be a kind of a one-off 30 films idea. And, that first batch of 30 films from 30 filmmakers, all who were connected to the story, that came out. And it was such a success that they chose to kind of continue. So the brand's been around over 10 years. We've made, over 110 feature films, 50 or 60 short films, now 20 or 30 podcasts as well. So, it's a long history of a lot of people who've contributed to it. I think that's what's so exciting about it, because we're so director driven. We've had lots of different directors, lots of new talent kind of make 30 for 30s. Additionally, the last couple of years, we launched the 30 for 30 podcast, which the ultimate compliment I can give is that I think our 30 for 30 podcasts are as good as our films. They're audio documentaries. So we're expanding the brand in that way. We're constantly seeking out what are new talents we should work with, what are new stories we should cover, what's the definition of a story that we should get behind. So, the key to the whole brand is finding new people and new storytelling techniques to tell all these stories. We want them all to look and feel different, and really feel authored by the person. But it was that triumvirate of Connor Shell, Bill Simmons, and John Dahl who got that first batch up and going, which was from there it's history.
Right. Now, there have been a lot of 30 for 30s that you just mentioned, and obviously, here at American Ballers, basketball related. So, I, off the top of my head, the ones that I know of basketball wise that I always used to follow, of course, the Fab Five, Lakers versus Celtics, Bert and Ernie, I know Ernie Grunfeld and Bernard King. That was a great story. And then, like you mentioned, The Last Dance. One that really resonated with me that I really thought was very important was the film Broke. And it talked about all athletes, whether it's, football, basketball, and all of that. And, of course, here we try to teach these kids financial literacy, saving money, and all of that. Did you, not, I don't say you personally, but was that a challenge, try to get a lot of these guys who went through those situations to come out and speak publicly about those situations? And what was that process like on that film?
Yeah, so Broke was a little before my time, but it's definitely one of those interesting cases for 30 for 30, because normally we don't do a thematic film like about Broke and then tell all these stories. Normally we tell like a singular story, but that one, has gotten a lot of love and did incredible ratings, and it is really interesting. I think the sad story is there's plenty of people to talk about that issue. So I think, it wasn't hard finding people. But yeah, that's one that's had a great life to it in terms of people thinking about it. It seems like modern day athletes have mastered kind of financial literacy and are building businesses and brands in a way that previous generations haven't. So I'm not going to say Broke, but maybe Broke was a part of that education, and seeing that in a documentary helped spur somebody on. But it just feels like, athletes have taken the next step to, really driving, I would say, some of the best entrepreneurship in the country, in terms of being investors and in terms of building jobs and building companies.
I agree 100%, because in my profession, I'm in finance as well, helping people. And to just bring that, people are very embarrassed, and especially, athletes, uncomfortable. And I think the whole genre about finance, it's for me, what I've been dealing with for, 30 years with people, is like they think, well, that's for somebody else. I don't make enough for that.
Yep.
But it is something for everyone. So when you get all this money that you've never had, and your agent, and I know that has changed, is telling you just focus on what you've been focused on, which is playing ball. And then afterwards, you have all these things, and you don't really have a conception of what it costs to, simple things, pay your electric bill, maintain your expenses. And I think just, and I agree with Sean, seeing that, even though it was an uncomfortable thing, it taught the new generation of athletes. They may not they may not still come from the community where they, came from very little, but they can see the pattern and saying, well, I better know some of this stuff.
Yeah, and I don't think
because
it's just athletes. I think you said, I think everybody has,
Mhm,
finance kind of insecurities, and I
mhm,
think that's because where are you supposed to learn it? It's not part of our schooling system,
mhm,
so unless you have a family member or a close friend willing to take you under your wing, then you have to be self-guided. And that's very hard to do for people as well. So, I think, athletes, get a bad rap sometimes
mhm.
when it's really a problem that everybody faces. It's just that they have a lot of money that comes in automatically. And I think that's something our educational system needs to do a better job of, teaching real life skills, and financial literacy
Yes.
certainly is a huge part of that.
Yeah, because you'd be amazed how many kids. My cousin's an educator in the South Bronx, and she's helped so many kids over 30 plus years. But the simple thing of telling them, you know, about opening a checking account or savings account, they're like, "Oh, we don't go to the banks," you know,
Yeah.
and it's because they don't know. And I'm like, and that's like the first step, you
Yeah,
know.
again, I wouldn't even put it on kids. I mean, you'd be shocked to know how many adults that I know who, have never put a budget together, and have never like
Yeah.
really had, have credit card debt, and haven't been unable to do it. So I think there's a lot of shame, like you said.
Hmm.
Um, and I think people need to know that there's a lot of great resources out there now to
Yes.
learn about this on your own, and that there shouldn't be shame to it. People should, try to educate themselves and talk about it with their friends.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask which one of I know it's hard, but which one was your favorite? If you had a favorite to pick of the.
I have different eras of 30 for 30. I
Okay.
mean, certainly from the first batch of 30 for 30s, I certainly love June 17th, 1994. That is an all archival
Yeah.
look at that day, and again,
Yeah.
we talk about finding different approaches and amazing
Hmm.
filmmakers. That's certainly one that I'm really, that I really love. That's a classic for me. I loved our
For,
Bruce
for
Lee
our view,
film.
for our viewers, can you explain that? The
Sure.
June.
June 17th, 1994 was the day of the OJ chase, but also was the day Arnold Palmer competed in the U.S. Open. There was hockey, there was NBA games going on. So there was just this confluence of a tremendous amount of sporting events and culture on the same day. So again, that film, what it does is in an all archival setting, it like puts you in that day, and oh my God, I forgot that day happened. So that type of vibe I think is fascinating, and again, that type of storytelling is interesting. We love archival, so anytime someone can pull off in a great way the all archival, I think it's pretty special. We did a Bruce Lee film last year that I think is an extraordinary film by Bao Gwyn. That film, is not an A to Z Bruce Lee. It tells a very specific story about Asian American male representation in Hollywood, told through the couple of years where Bruce Lee had a hard time getting starring roles in America and had to go to Hong Kong to become an international star. So we love the kind of like perspective on that. But I think, listen, I love Fab Five, Once Brothers, Benji, The Best That Ever Was. Fantastic Lies. The good thing about it is there's almost nobody who's seen all of them. So if you think you're an expert on 30 for 30, I guarantee you haven't seen our shorts or listened to all of our podcasts. And now we have such a strong library that there's always something to go back and rediscover. But for us, the North Star certainly is our OJ Made in America. That's, which won the Oscar and certainly is some of the best storytelling on the planet. So I think that's our standard, Last Dance, it's not officially a 30 for 30. Again, it's from our team that also is just like the standard of storytelling. So we're trying to have these projects be great films or series that happen to take place within sports in that order. So again, it's not about who won the game or what the score was, but it's about what does it represent? What is this about? What is the larger message? And sports is such a such an influence in culture, especially in America, that it's such a great backdrop for lots of amazing human stories.
Right. Now I have a statement and then also have a question. So first I'm gonna do the statement. You just mentioned Benji. You know, we had an event in Orlando last year with Nick Anderson, former Orlando Magic player who's from Chicago. And he brought it to my attention. I had never heard, let me take that back. A couple years ago, I saw the documentary, but he gave me more in-depth information about Benji because he grew up with him in Chicago. And it was amazing the stories he was telling me about just a lot of those stories about kids, you know, for whatever reason, whether it was gang violence, him getting killed, a lot of situations that a lot of athletes don't really fulfill their promise. And one thing I could, you know, statement wise was I want to commend, you know, you guys that you bring to light a lot of stories that most people would never even think about. Oh, that happened? That never made national news. You know, of course, OJ, and we remember OJ. I remember where I was on June 17th, you know, in front of the TV, but a lot of these behind the scenes stories, you know, Bruce Lee was before my time. Getting to know these people, I guess, on TV screen personally, I think that's a tremendous job that you guys have been doing. And my question was, of all the films, you know, what's something that, if you can talk about it, what's something that you would like to see come out, or what's something that you envision in your mind that you would like to see somebody do, but has never came to the forefront yet?
Sure. To your first point, you know, we're always talking about the balance of, you know, taking something that everybody knows and finding an unexpected way into that story. So again, those big names and then coming at it from a different way, but then also making sure that we're still finding those tiny stories, you know, those stories that are under the radar that represent, and those might not be the biggest ratings winners or, you know, might not get the biggest audiences, but we think those stories can also be incredibly special. So we're always glad to hear when people discover a story that they didn't know. We put out a film called The Infinite Race last year. It's a Mexican film. It's mostly in Spanish. It's this tiny little story about long distance runners in Mexico, and like, it's obviously a small story, but it touches on so many incredible topics and themes that I'm just very proud that it's part of our library, you know, and that people will discover that film hopefully for years and years to come. So that's part of it. You know, I think when it comes to what stories we're looking for, I mean, there's still certainly, you know, big names that I wish we could do. I mean, Andre Agassi, I think is on that list. Like, I would certainly, it's one of the best sports biography books of all time. I think that would make for an incredible film. He's, you know, again, there has to be the right time and place. People, it's not just, can you make a film? Is the person ready to be on camera? Are they ready to share what they're looking for? So I'll certainly tell you that one. I will not tell you anymore because I am grinding behind the scenes, chipping away, trying to bring them in. And, you know, we have an entire new slate of stuff that's entering production that'll be coming out over the next couple of years, stuff that's unexpected, stuff that's a little bit out of left field. We want people to say, wow, I didn't know 30 for 30 could do that. Or, you know, hey, I know nothing about this story, but I trust 30 for 30. I'm going to watch it. So, you know, the goal is to find the best filmmakers on the planet, the best stories, and then give them time and money and churn out the best films.
I have another question. Well, obviously, I love what you're doing and everything else, but what about more focus? Would you see ESPN would be still open, as they are open to more stories towards the women, whether women athletes, you know, the young girls, especially given this time of, you know, justice in women, you know,
That's
you
a
got
great
some
question.
powerhouse young ladies coming up, and it's just like and coming from the women that they came from, you know, because my goal obviously is really to empower the youth, and especially the minority young ladies that, you know, I look like them, so they could say, look, you know, life ain't easy, but you have a story to be told.
Yeah, no, it's a huge priority. I think, you know, the thing about women's sports is that it's been less televised. So there's less archive that exists. It hasn't been as long. Additionally, we don't do Olympic stories because we don't have the rights to the Olympics. So that cuts off a
Okay.
huge amount of stories of,
Yeah.
great Olympic stories. So we are committed both to finding subjects and filmmakers, by the way,
Mhm.
to tell stories who are women. It is trying to find those things that matter. I mean, because we are a historical brand, we are looking for things that are in the past. So, when you see the Naomi Osakas and the Serena Williams and the Simone Biles and, all these they're like now, right? And so we don't
Right.
do a lot of now docs, but I will give you a couple of things that are coming up this year, which I think is really exciting. When COVID hit, we got a lot of pitches about every single scenario you can imagine for sports and COVID. So
Mhm.
we got all these pitches, and we had a really hard time thinking about where should we make a choice for something. Where should our storytelling exist? Where's a way we can make something that really stands the test of time? And we ended up making two choices. So one, we did a podcast that came out last December that is called March 11th, 2020, which is, the day the NBA stopped. And also all these, similar to June 17th, 1994, all these things happened, and it kind of culminates. Tom Hanks gets coronavirus on that day. NBA shuts down. Harvey Weinstein was sentenced, like all these things, and leading up to an address by President Trump, in the evening, So we made that choice because we felt like that was a day to mark. But the other one that I'm especially excited about, which comes out this year, is we were embedded within the WNBA bubble. So we made the choice. The NBA bubble is, lots of people are trying to get in there. It's, people making a lot of money, doing their thing. The WNBA, or the leaders of the social justice movement, to be very frank, across sports. And because they don't make the same money, because they're a league on the rise, I think we were given an incredible amount of access, And so our filmmakers, we sent a very small team down there, and they were able to get extraordinary access, very deep. And so we're now in post-production on that film, and we're very excited about that. So that's coming out. Additionally, we have a film coming out about Maya Moore. So Maya Moore, greatest basketball player on the planet, arguably. Additionally, she retired or took a leave of absence in the middle of her career to help free a man from prison, Jonathan Irons, who subsequently she married. So that story we are doing as well this year. So those are two, that we're doing coming up this year. But I'm looking for more. I think there's a bunch of stories that I'd like to do that haven't come up yet on the women's side, but it's a major focus for us. And I think you're right. We need to do more and find more of those stories.
Now, given your journey and everything you talked about briefly before, of how you paved your way to get to where you are, at ESPN and where you are now, what would be your message, to youth who, whether they're involved in sports or not, but they have an idea that they want to get into film. I've come across a lot of athletes that post playing career, they get into filmmaking, they get into storytelling, so that's what, that they like to talk about, the things that they came through and went through. What would be your advice to anybody who wants to get into the film industry and what to expect from that industry?
I would start by controlling what you can control, right? So like, you want to get in the film industry, start educating yourself, subscribe to the Hollywood Reporter, read deadline.com, if if you're interested in documentaries, watch a lot of documentaries and not just the most popular ones. You want to get into scripted? What kind of scripted do you want to get into? Read and watch all that scripted. Read the scripts. You can find most of those online. So it's like, control what you can control to start, which is getting information, understanding your taste, understanding what's going on. And so if you read the kind of headlines of what's being reported, you can kind of see who the players are. You can then watch those projects. You can understand the companies. You can understand the producers. You can understand all the people who are moving the industry, who are not necessarily the actors or the people that are front facing. So you can do that, certainly, and that doesn't cost you anything. You can get all that information online. And then I always tell people, like, pick up a side project, like I worked for free and still work for free on stuff on the side, right? So if you want to be a producer, produce something. It doesn't matter. It could be a web series, could be an event, could be whatever it is, but like, try on that hat. You want to be a director, direct a social media video, direct something like that. Like, don't try to run before you walk. Just like, get whatever reps you can, and get your 10,000 hours wherever you can. Like, and by the way, then when the opportunity to interview for a spot, and to break into that job, you could say to the person interviewing, like, hey, I love this business so much. I've been doing this, this, and this on the side, So again, control what you're going to control, educate yourself, watch what you love, and like consume a ton of stuff, because I think that's the key, is like understanding, and when you watch something, hey, if you love something, who's the producer? Who's the director? Watch something else that they've done, really kind of go down the rabbit hole and not just at the top level.
What would you say to you has been the most fulfilling aspect or accomplishment throughout your whole career? What's something that you're really, really proud of, giving everything you've done, film-wise and everything?
It's a great question. At ESPN, my part of the process, I could work on something for 2 years before it even enters into production. So there's a lot of projects that I spent a lot of time honing the story, finding the director, making sure that the timing is right, pushing it up the hill, in whatever way I can. And so, I think sometimes just the battle of those things, it's something that's really, feels great when I actually get something into production. So these things take so long, even at a place like ESPN, to get made. I think that's probably the most fulfilling for this job. But, I think for me, it's like when I find an idea and I have that moment of like, hey, I think this could really work. And then I find the right filmmaker and they're excited about it and it all comes together. So I can't say it's any one single project. I'm certainly, I always tell people it's just even incredibly hard to make a mediocre film. So any film that like gets made is a small miracle into itself. The fact that a film can be great is certainly the goal. But I would say just if I'm able to kind of find a new talent or identify somebody that we should work with and find that, I think that's certainly the most fulfilling to me.
You've done all this work. Besides women, would you guys be looking more at, the global community, on more international, getting some of the stories where actually may have more history, like you said, in Latin America or Africa, just
It's a great question. Yeah,
just coming to America, and then that has such a whole big story, how they even got there,
Yeah, I think for us, and this is where the kind of show business comes in, right? I mean,
Right.
ESPN is primarily a North American business. Now there are stuff around the globe, but I am primarily trying to attract audience in America. Now, that being said, we can come at it a lot of different ways. It doesn't, it can be, there needs to be some way to get somebody into that story. So when I look at international stories, it's easy when it's a story of somebody who immigrated in, certainly an American audiences know. If it's a story that is basically an international story where, about cricket or about Australian league football or, stuff where American audiences, might not know the sport, I think it then just puts a high bar on what the story is itself, but yeah, I'm looking across the globe to try to find stories that I think could be, an international audience, that American audiences might be really interested. We have a couple that are in production I can't talk about that I think, will, even if you're not familiar with that story, the themes are so big and the story is so crazy that I think it'll get people to come in. I mean, when we did in the first batch, which I was not a part of, but Two Escobars, which is another obviously classic, 30 for 30, like obviously it's using the narco football and Pablo Escobar, that's an international story, but also people obviously can't get enough of that story. But part of the story was about the World Cup in '94, right? And so there was a peg to an American event that allowed people in. So I think that's a little bit of a model that we look for, but I agree. We're in a globalized world. I tell people every day that my job is to make sure the best sports stories on the planet end up on ESPN. So I'm looking for those types of things.
Great, thank you. That is very encouraging because it's again, we're in a global environment, but we all belong to the same planet. So that just brings the human condition smaller. We're really just kind of like a speck together if we can just, go through that way or that ideology.
Yeah. And I think, 30 for 30 is a historical brand, but
Hmm.
I think we're ESPN Films as well. So if we see a historic moment happening in real time where we can get rare access to something, like I think we're open to that. Like the WNBA project that I
Hmm.
told you, like that's not a 10 years in the past type thing, but we thought this is history happening in real
Yes.
time. So to us, that still felt like a 30 for 30. So, we're looking at those, and certainly global sports again is like, if there's an amazing story happening and we can be there, with access that's very rare, that's magic.
Absolutely.
Now, we always wrap up with this question for our guest. It could be sports related or anything that comes to your mind. What does being an American baller mean to Adam Neuhaus?
I like that. I like those two phrases. Still very proud to be an American. We're an incomplete country, but we strive to be better. And I think this past year has been a lot about that. And I think that's something that I think we can talk about all the disunity and the path to get here, but I see a lot of people trying to do a lot of good things. And so I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that mission. And then when I think about baller, like, listen, this is still a land of opportunity. And in entertainment, especially right now, you could start $1 billion brand from an Instagram feed. The gatekeepers are gone. This has never been a better time to be in the content game. If you really think you can make something great, prove it. The internet, it does not lie. Like show me the views, So if you say you're the best filmmaker ever and nobody's seen your video, it's not the best film ever, Like the people will find greatness wherever it exists. And now, like, there's never been more opportunity for people. So, when I think about baller, I think about that hustle. I think about people crafting their own careers, making their own path. There's job titles that never existed before, except in this generation. There's so many ways to do it. Now we all work from home, but in the future, you might be able to craft whatever type of work-life balance you want. So you're constantly striving. So, I see that a country and a hustle, all together, and I'm optimistic for the future, even if we've had a rough year.
Well said.
Applause, audience applause, okay? Applause in the side hustle. New Yorkers, we still love our side hustle.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you again for taking the time out to speak to our audience and be with us here today. You left us with a lot of knowledge. And, I just, like I said, big fan. I've always been about ESPN, but also these films and everything, you're being a part of. So I just want to thank you again for your time today.
Thank you for being a fan. Keep watching. I appreciate the thought-provoking questions. And I'm glad it was a real joy. So thank you.
Thank you.